بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الصلاة والسلام على سيدنا وحبيبنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد فالسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Dear brothers and sisters, this is your brother Haroon from the Netherlands, and I am back with another book review. And today I'm doing a book review of a book I bought last week, and I read it in one go, in one sitting, just last night. And I decided to do a review of this book because of the importance, I think, of the book and why it is important. I will deliberate on that in a few moments, inshallah. I just want to share with you that I do podcasts or book reviews of books in several languages. So I do it in English and in Dutch, and I discuss books written in Dutch, English, German, and also Arabic, inshallah. At least that's the plan. Now, returning to the book I just finished, and decided to do this review because of its importance, as I said, because it's about a very important Muslim scholar from Morocco. I think we should all know, and it's a scholar of recent times. He passed away in 1993, rahimahullah. So it's around a little bit more than 30 years ago already. But he's still relevant, I think, and he deserves to be more well known. Some people have called him an uncelebrated scholar, and perhaps the author who compiled his biography wanted to shed a little bit more light on him by introducing him and to making him and his work more well known amongst the English-speaking Muslims, as he deserves, in my humble opinion. And I'm no longer going to withhold from you the title of the book and about whom it is from you, and I'll show you the cover of the book. It's actually a booklet, as you can see here. It's about Sheikh Abdullah bin Siddiq al-Ghumari, rahimahullah, a biography by Sheikh Tarek Elgawhary from Egypt originally and from the United States. And the work is written in English, and as I said, it's a booklet. It's a small book. It has 63 pages in total. So as you can know already and see from this, you can really read this in one go if you devote some of your time to it. It's a very accessible read, it's a very easy read, and it's a very enjoyable read. And I would actually add to that to me it feels more like it's like a lecture, actually. Why I'm saying this is also because it's not an academic work. There's no footnotes in this work. There's no biography in this work. It's just written as if he's lecturing us about the life of Sheikh Abdullah bin Siddiq al-Ghumari, rahimahullah. And it's an introductory work. It introduces us to the Sheikh himself and his family and the main events in his life, and a little bit about his scholarly life, his scholarly output, some of the events that happened in his life that shaped his life as well. And it mentions some of his shuyukh, it mentions some of his students, and some of his works. Although the Sheikh was a very prolific author, and as far as I can, read, he authored over 60 works all in Arabic, of course, and from what I can gather, they're not that easily available, especially for students, for Muslim students or students of knowledge living in the West. And I think it's perhaps also the way this book was written that the compiler, Sheikh Tarek Elgawhary, did not mean to provide us with a list of his publications. Now, what I did for myself, I wrote down a few points, important points from this work, and I'm gonna mention these points one by one for you, so you have an impression about this work and who Sheikh Abdullah bin Siddiq al-Ghumari was. Yeah, okay, let me start there. But before I do that, before I discuss these points with you, I wrote down, let me give you a short impression of the book itself. So the book itself, it was published just at the beginning of this month via Amazon. So the book is available via Amazon. It's an independent publication by Sheikh Tarek. And it has three main parts. The first part is called Beginnings, and that is the period from 1910 to 1952. Then we have the second part, it's called Maelstrom, and I'll explain what that means a little bit later, inshallah. From page 27, that discusses the period from 1952 to 1969, and the last part, the third part, in the life of Sheikh Abdullah bin Siddiq al-Ghumari, is called Freedom, and it starts at page 41, and that part is from 1970 up to his demise in 1993. So the book starts with the demise of the Sheikh in 1993 in Tangiers, Morocco. So Tangiers, Morocco is a large city at the edge of the Atlantic Ocean and the Mediterranean Sea. And it's the main port of Morocco, and it's the entrance to, or the gate to Africa, as some people say. So if you go, for example, from Spain to Morocco, you can take a boat in Spain, in Algeciras, for example, and you take a direct boat to Tangiers, where you will arrive. I did it once in my life, 1997. I think it took about an hour. I don't know, I'm not sure anymore how long it took. So he writes at page 1, the 19th of Sha'ban, 1413 of the Hijri calendar, that is, which equals the 11th of February 1993, was an unprecedented day for the port of Tangiers. In a city that rarely engages in public displays of grieving, hundreds of thousands poured out of their homes to participate in the funeral of Al-Sharif Abdullah bin Siddiq al-Ghumari, rahimahullah. From what I gather from this beginning, this introduction, it seems to me, but I might be wrong, and I hope the author corrects me, but I have the impression that this is a personal account, that this biography is a personal account by the author, and it seems to me he attended that funeral, but wallahu a'lam. And then on the second page, it starts with the birth of Sheikh Abdullah bin Siddiq al-Ghumari, who was born on the 1st of Rajab, 1328 of the Hijri calendar, which equals the 8th of July, 1910, and he was born in Tangiers, in northern Morocco. And pretty soon after his birth, and this is the first point I wrote down for myself, we see that as an infant, Sheikh Abdullah bin Siddiq al-Ghumari went on Hajj with his family. His father took him and the whole family for Hajj at the age of 1. And at birth, Sheikh Abdullah bin Siddiq al-Ghumari was presented with a weak physical constitution and was prone to frequent bouts of illness. So the Hajj, it was quite strenuous, and that was actually the first time he escaped death. And there will be another moment in his biography, in his life, that he escapes death, and we will get to that point as I go along. What you can see is that Sheikh Abdullah bin Siddiq al-Ghumari grew up in a Sufi environment and a Sufi household, and his father had a Zawiya of the Shadiliya order, and he had a couple of brothers. So if we speak about the Ghumari brothers, we should think of Sheikh Ahmed al-Ghumari, then we have Sheikh Abdullah al-Ghumari, we have Sheikh Abdul Aziz al-Ghumari, and we have Sheikh Muhammad al-Zamzami. So there are 4 brothers. So from an early age, from when he was 5, he started studying under the tutelage of his father at their own Zawiya. And when he was around 10 or 11, he was transferred to Fez, to the city of Fez, in the heart of Morocco, to study at al-Qarawiyyin, the famous Islamic university. And he studied there for around 10 years, we can read here. And one of his main shuyukh was Sheikh al-Islam, Muhammad bin Ja'far al-Kattani, rahimahullah. And he was the second most important sheikh of Sheikh Abdullah bin Siddiq al-Ghumari, next to his father, we read here. So when he started studying at al-Qarawiyyin, and this is a significant passage, I thought, in this book, his father, he found it hard at the beginning, and his father gave him advice, a 2-piece advice, which I wanted to share with you here. It's on page 9. The first advice his father gave him is that there's no substitute for traditional classes. That's one. These classes and this methodology, so the traditional methodology, the classical methodology, are the way Islam is taught, preserved, and passed on, his father told him. That's one. Secondly, he told his son that since time is of the essence, it is not possible to study every discipline entirely. Rather, his father told him that each discipline contains keys to unlocking its secrets. Once these keys are identified, it's a sign that you can move on to another discipline, and so on. So this is a 2-piece advice of his father, and in the end we see things went easier for him, and after around 10 years he graduated at al-Qarawiyyin and went back to Tangiers. So when he was around 20 years old, he wrote his first book, and that was a sharh of al-Ajurumiyya, we can read here. And so he was already from a young age engaged in writing. And I don't know whether I mentioned it now or in the previous recording of this lecture, but Sheikh Tarek Elgawhary did not give us a list or a bibliography with all the works of the Sheikh. He does mention a few works here and there, but not with their titles. But if you do some research, you'll find out Sheikh Abdullah bin Siddiq al-Ghumari wrote 60 works or so, or more even, probably, on various sciences during his lifetime, next to the hundreds of articles he wrote as well. Then, when he was around 20 years of age, his father decided to send him to Al-Azhar in Cairo. So in 1930, he set out for Egypt with his brothers to study there. And we see that in Egypt, he switched madhab. He started as a Maliki and he switched to the Shafi'i madhab. And we see from his scholarly endeavors that he had a heavy focus on one, hadith, and secondly on Arabic grammar, nahu. Now, not long after he arrived in Cairo, he was able to graduate for the Alimiya for foreigners. That was around 2 or 3 years after his stay in Cairo. And he also obtained the Alimiya degree for Egyptians. So there were two pathways of obtaining the Alimiya, or two different Alimiyas actually. And he obtained both of them. And we see then he started writing articles, a lot of articles. One of his other shuyukh, which is mentioned in the book, is Sheikh Bakhit al-Muti'i, rahimahullah. Very well known and very important sheikh from Cairo. That was one of his shuyukh. And he passed away while he was in Egypt. And not long after the death of Sheikh Bakhit al-Muti'i, his father also passed away, and this was in 1936. And when his father passed away, they went back to Morocco. And then we see that his older brother Ahmed, he took over the Zawiya and stayed in Tangiers. And Sheikh Abdullah bin Siddiq al-Ghumari, he went back to Cairo to continue studying and writing. We see also that in that period, his brother Ahmed passed away in jail in Egypt when he was 60 years old. And there's also a power shift in Egypt. At first, Egypt was a safe haven. It was quiet and peaceful. But when Gamal Abdel Nasser took over, things started changing in Egypt as well. And in 1959, we see that Sheikh Abdullah bin Siddiq al-Ghumari was arrested and sentenced to death because they thought he was a French spy. But quickly his death sentence was changed into a life sentence. So he stayed for a long period in jail, around 10 years. And during those 10 years, he was able to write 23 books, we read here, and they've all been published. Let me see. So in 1969, he was released from prison, and then we have arrived at the third part of the book, which is called Freedom. So the second part of the book is called Maelstrom. Let me see, that starts at page 27, if I was correct. Maelstrom, so we've just covered the first and the second part. The second part is called Maelstrom, and Maelstrom, if I'm correct, it's a Scandinavian word or a German word originally, because we also know it in Dutch. Maelstrom, it means, or it points to a situation in which there's great confusion, turmoil, violence, destruction. And this is what we see in this, mainly in the second period of Sheikh Abdullah bin Siddiq al-Ghumari's life. Now, in 1969, if he is released from prison and he's free, a new phase in his life starts. He returns to Tangiers, to Morocco, and starts teaching from the Zawiya, the family Zawiya. And he was actually, before he left for Cairo, he was initiated by his father into their tariqah, the Shadiliya Siddiqiya tariqah, as we know it now. So he takes up the leadership of the Zawiya and starts teaching and writing and engaging in scholarly activities. And we see that in that period, he's becoming or he's gaining recognition as a scholar, and up to his death in 1993, every year he would spend 3 months in Cairo and 9 months in Tangiers. And that's basically the last part of his life. And we see from that period, let me mention a few things here from the book here. We see that one of his students is named here, and that student is his lifetime student, Sheikh Saleh al-Ja'fari, rahimahullah. He was a long-time student. And we see also another student of his, which is the current Sheikh of the Shadiliya Siddiqiya order, that's Sheikh Ali Jum'a. He's also mentioned here. And he would have a tremendous impact in helping spread the ideas, the methodology, and the unique opinions of Sheikh Abdullah bin Siddiq al-Ghumari in the future. And then we see that Sheikh Abdullah al-Ghumari wrote about nearly every Islamic subject there is, and he engaged with society, he engaged with modernity. Some people have called him a scholar at the threshold of modernity, actually. And he had some very unique positions and opinions. Now we have arrived at the last part of the book, and I'm just going to read the last 2 pages, which closes off the work. Aside from the travels mentioned above, Abdullah's post-prison years were remarkably consistent, with 9 months a year spent in Tangiers and 3 months a year spent in Cairo, as I said. He taught and wrote steadily throughout these years up until a few months before his death, when he could no longer hold a pen steadily or long enough to write. The political turbulence that marked much of his life and the life of his father and brother had now subsided. So I didn't mention that he had a lot of trouble with his youngest brother, Muhammad al-Zamzami, who turned Salafi. There was no more freedom fighting in Morocco since it gained independence from France in 1956, and no more political threats from Egypt, the country having entered a period of relative stability after the assassination of President Sadat in 1981, when Mubarak took over. The challenges of his younger brother Muhammad al-Zamzami also ended with his demise in 1988. And Sheikh Abdullah bin Siddiq al-Ghumari, rahimahullah, passed away peacefully on the 19th of Sha'ban in 1413 of the Hijri calendar, which is equal to the 11th of February 1993 in Tangiers, Morocco, as we read at the beginning of the book. And we ask Allah to have mercy upon him and to enter him into paradise at the highest level, and we ask Allah to let us benefit from his works and to let us get more acquainted with his life and his works, so it will have a lasting impact on us and those around us, inshallah. And with this, I close off this book discussion. It's a little bit longer than I used to do with the other book reviews, but I found this very, very interesting because I think it's always very beneficial to read about the lives of previous scholars, and especially of those which have not passed away a long time ago, because they are of big importance for us, I think, personally. And I just love reading about biographies, reading their biographies in order to see if I can emulate them in my own life, and they serve as a motivation for me to study and to write myself. After having read this, one of the main benefits or takeaways I take from his biography is, one, to focus more on hadith. Secondly, to focus on acquiring and mastering the Arabic language, and especially Arabic grammar and nahu, as the Sheikh did. Because as we could read in this book here, if you master those two subjects, you will have a very strong and solid basis in answering questions and also refuting doubts. And also, they will enable you to have sound arguments, and to be able to reference your arguments soundly and strongly. So with this, I will close this review. I hope it was of benefit. I will put the link to the book below this video, and I will also put a link to the website of the tariqah of Sheikh Abdullah bin Siddiq al-Ghumari, so people can benefit from that as well, and it's in English. So نكتفي بهذا القدر. جزاكم الله خيرا. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك. Thank you all for watching, and please spread this video and like. Once again, barakallahu feekum. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.